Day. It is January 27th, 2026, and you're tuning in to the Ask Dr. Jeff Zoom experience, where we discuss all things optimal wellness, really focusing on holistic health, understanding our bodies so that we can make informed and make quality decisions about how to improve our health and wellness and longevity. I'm your host and facilitator, Dr. Jeff Hubbard. I'm a medical doctor here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. We are currently snowed in, guys, so it has been a cozy couple of days. I got out for the first time earlier today, and I'll say that the roads are still slick and icy, but we're probably going to thaw out here tomorrow. So I'm excited about that, getting back to business and excited to share space with you guys. As always, this does not happen without you. I can't answer questions if you don't ask them. So I'm so excited about our Q&A later. We're going to dive right in. We've been having some really great discussion around just understanding our physiology, right? Understanding how disease develops. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the kidney and how it contributes to various different challenges and problems that we may experience within our system, and how the kidney is connected to several other key organs. All right. So that we're going to expound upon that a little bit today, and sort of explain how the kidney is so invaluable and important to the way our physiology functions, by just sort of connecting the dots between the heart, the lungs, and the circulatory system. All right. So I was lucky enough, I think, for my personal edification, to be a part of a very new developing sort of curriculum in the medical world. When I went to medical school, we learned by something called problem-based learning. And so we had blocks of information that we studied, and we actually had a consistent case study that we covered as student doctors that explained to us exactly how the system works, and to think about it as the way you would as a doctor, not as a scientist, not as a student. So we dove right in, right out of the gate. So our first conversation was in a small group learning setting. And that was really cool because um, the first block of information, if you will, was called CRR. That stands for cardio, respiratory, and renal. All right. So we'll connect the dots with those three. So everybody knows that the heart's responsibility is contracting and expanding so that blood can be moved and circulated, if you will, throughout the system. All right. So our blood pressure is the blood pressure in whatever artery you're measuring while the heart is contracted. That is what we call systolic blood pressure, the first number. And then when the heart is relaxed, that is called diastolic blood pressure. And that is associated with the pressure in a particular artery when the heart is not contracting. All right. And that moves blood throughout the system. We have miles and miles and miles and miles of heart, of arteries and veins. All right. And so we can have a multitude of different conversations about all of the different arteries and veins, but just understand that the arteries are the side of the circulatory system that delivers blood, and the veins are the side of the system that returns blood or moves blood back to the heart. So the arteries take it away, the veins bring it back, right? So it's this big cycle loop, right? Where heart pumps blood out, veins bring blood back to heart. All right. Does that make sense? And then we have in between capillaries. All right. Capillaries are very small, narrow, microscopic connections between the artery system and the venous system. And that's where the oxygen exchange takes place. So we have these capillaries all over the place because they're dropping off oxygen and nutrients right to the spot that's most needed. All right. So there's a huge connection there because the circulatory system is cleansed by the kidney. All right, that is the number one function of the kidney, is to clean that blood and to remove any excess. All right, so we've sort of casually described this as waste, Waste is not always a bad thing. It just means you have excess, you have more than you need. So the kidneys are constantly going through this distillation, filtration process of the blood, taking out things and keeping things. All right. So that's another huge component and connection. And then we have the respiratory system or the lungs. All right. So how do we get oxygen into the bloodstream? We do so by taking in a breath, right? So when we inhale, the lungs are expanding, the diaphragm is contracting, and all of this area, the parenchyma tissue of lung tissue, fills with oxygen and various other minerals from the air. All right. And then we have an exhale. All right. So there is a gas exchange. Oxygen goes into the bloodstream, carbon dioxide, a byproduct, goes back into the lungs and is expanded with an exhale. All right. So exhale means everything contracts, you're pushing all of that air out, and then you're prepared to make a big expansion. So we go through this process thousands of times per day. All right. And so there's so many cool things that we now know about controlling your breath. Many in the East believe that is meditation by itself, is just controlling your breath. We know about breath work. We know about how important it is to stay oxygenated. All right. There's all sorts of hydrogen gas and products and oxygen bar products and um, all sorts of really awesome things that help to get everything incorporated into the system and make sure your lungs are healthy, right? Because that process of delivery of oxygen is key, right? That burning sensation when you're exercising is not because you're on fire, it's because your cells and your muscle tissue don't have enough oxygen, right? It's become an anaerobic environment that creates acid. But the more oxygen you're able to put into the system, and once you get in shape, then those processes take a much longer time to happen, and they don't necessarily happen to the degree that happen when we're not in shape and we're not able to deliver oxygen and nutrients. So that's literally the aging process, right? Um, these arteries and veins start to slow down, they start to get narrow, they start to get what we call sclerotic. So this is just the sort of intensity of the development of scar tissue throughout the circulatory system. And that impacts the kidney, right? The kidney says, I'm not getting enough blood to cleanse. I need to change and stimulate the system. So it starts to send hormone messengers and chemical messengers that change the physiology of the body. It is a very fascinating system. I won't bore you with all the details, but just know that the kidney has a major influence on how this circulation happens. The heart has a major influence on how the circulation happens, and the lungs have a major influence on how oxygen and nutrients are exchanged from the circulatory system, right? All of these things have to be working in harmony, guys. If they're not working in harmony, that's when you start to see a lot of the pathology that you guys have been asking about. And so this is a really key rule that you think about. If one part of the system is not working right, all of the other points, all of the other major organs and areas that are emphasized in this particular set of information, they're going to try to bring things back into balance. So they're going to be stressed. So if your kidneys are low, your heart and your lungs are stressed. If your heart is declining, then your lungs and your kidneys are stressed. If you have COPD or some kind of respiratory issue, your kidneys and your heart are going to be stressed. So they have a very key relationship with each other. And it's important to maintain their functionality because those three organs specifically are the number one reason why we check out. Something happens with one or more of those three systems, and that's when we start to see catastrophic issues happen. Okay, so important to take care of those things ahead of time. Be proactive, preemptive. Study those labs. Make sure you know the signs and symptoms that are happening in your body. That could mean something's out of whack, because the sooner you do something about it, the better it is. All right. So, guys, we have um, let's see, right on time. Perfect. We have 15 minutes, guys, to sort of unpack this even further. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have thoughts, if you have any experiences, I'd love to have discourse with you during the rest of this episode. And so I'm excited. Let me say this before we roll into any questions, any thoughts, any comments from the audience. This is not medical advice, guys. This is not intended to heal, treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any sort of disease. We're just simply talking about educational and theoretical opportunities here, guys, with new knowledge and new information and things that are on the cutting edge. So, guys, take this as being really important information that I encourage you to digest and appreciate. All right. So, guys, we're gonna roll into our Q&A. Please, by all means, guys, raise your hand, use your emoji. We already have one hand up, as you can see. Guys, you can do so by activating the screen and looking for your react icon. If you click that, then that allows you to get access to emojis. You can raise your hand, you can clap, you can send a heart. Please, by all means, do any and all of those things if you would like in response to any of the comments that we have going on. All right. If there's a comment, question, anything, and you're not comfortable saying it in public, you can also put it into the chat. All right. Sounds like a plan. Naomi, ma'am, you have the floor.
Hello,
Good
Dr.
evening.
Jeff.
Happy to
How
you.
are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm okay. Thank you for being in our lives today and giving us all this information. It's wonderful.
Absolutely.
But I
My
have a
pleasure.
question.
Okay, shoot.
Okay, now, you know my son.
I do.
Anyway, he was telling me about, we were talking about protein shakes, and he can't have protein because if I'm understanding what he's saying, his kidneys is they're seeping, something is seeping, the protein is seeping into his body. Could you explain what he's trying to tell me?
Absolutely. So we oftentimes utilize something called a urinalysis in medicine to understand exactly what's happening with the kidneys. So a urinalysis analyzes the components and the contents of the urine, things like pH, things like if there's any blood or immune cells in the urine sample, things like if there's glucose or protein in the urine, all right, and the specific density, and obviously you can see and experience a lot of things from odor to color of the urine to consistency, volume, all of those things. So all of those play a role in us understanding exactly what the kidney may be doing. So in this instance, I believe what your son is communicating is that there was protein found in his urine. And in later stages of kidney decline, we do see that the functional component of the kidney is something called a nephron. And a nephron is think of it like a sponge. So the blood is flowing through, and certain things are getting stuck and going into the urine, and some things are continuing to flow in the bloodstream. Typically, a healthy kidney does not allow protein to go into the urine. Protein is too big to fit through the sponge,
Okay.
usually. So in this instance, as the sponge sort of gets a little bit brittle and there's larger spaces in between, that means that the protein sometimes can find its way into the urine. And so that's just an example of a kidney that's not functioning at 100%. And so the doctor, the nephrologist in this instance, is just explaining to your son to be careful about what's happening with how much protein you take in your diet, because the more protein that's coming out in the urine, the more it stresses the kidney. So he should be focusing on sort of a low protein diet. And it would be my opinion, what I would encourage is for him to consider as close to veganism as possible until he rebuilds his cardiovascular system. Because this is a perfect question, Naomi, because this helps us go right back into our conversation at the beginning of the episode today. right? So his kidneys are in trouble, which means that his circulatory system and now his diet, the GI system, is now coming into play, right?
Okay. Okay.
So he needs to be minimizing the plaque buildup and the sclerosis in the arterial system. And the most powerful way to do that is through a vegan, clean diet. And I know
Okay.
this because there's a gentleman who has now transitioned to the ancestor realm, but he was an amazing cardiologist named Baxter Montgomery. He actually helped to treat my mother when she was ill. He was in Houston, and he's written several books, written several research articles. He has documented evidence that 90 days of a vegan diet helped to clear coronary artery disease. I'm
Okay.
gonna let that sink in. 90 days
Okay.
of a vegan diet, raw vegan diet, took people who were on death's doorstep with cardiovascular and coronary artery disease, and that resolved itself with a vegan diet.
Okay. Okay.
This is not somebody who is on my side of the fence. He's not a holistic. Well, he became as such, right? But this was a gentleman who was in the hospital doing stents, doing open heart surgery, and he came to realize through his own research that if you instituted this vegan diet for cardiovascular health, it would completely change how somebody's physiology worked.
Okay.
So I mentioned that to him. I think now it might be a little bit more emphasized, right? Because
Yeah.
things have stabilized, but they're still not getting better.
Right.
So this is the time to be really aggressive and to say, hey, I'm gonna make a stand, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna plant my feet in the sand, and I'm going to change this. And I guarantee you, anybody can do it for 90 days if it means the difference between dialysis and no dialysis.
True. That's true.
I think so. And so I would just encourage him, motivate him to really give that some strong thought. If he wants to talk back to me, I'm more than happy to help. You know, there's so many different things that are out here now that you may be able to utilize to help slow down that process, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Jeff. I really appreciate it because he was trying to
Absolutely.
tell me, and I was like, I don't understand. So I just couldn't
So,
get it.
you know, it's so interesting. It's like, um, there's certain foundational things that you have to understand before you can even go to that. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
these conversations are really valuable because it sort of makes it plain how all of these different systems work together. You know, because if you think about the kidneys isolated and only the kidney, then it doesn't make sense how the heart and lungs
Right.
are a part
Right.
of it. But
Right.
when you start talking about how all of them are intertwined, then it
And
starts
that's
making
when it may
sense
start to
when it's
make
like,
sense. Yeah.
okay. And so I'm
Okay.
glad that the conversation was uh, comprehensive enough for you to be able to put the question together.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your information. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely, ma'am. Anytime, you know me. All right, Jackie T, what's up, lady? How are you? I see your hand.
Yes, good evening, Dr. Jeff, and good evening to everyone. I hope everyone is well. And like you, Dr. Jeff, we've been snowed in since basically the middle of the night, going Saturday into Sunday. Yesterday, when my daughter and I stepped outside our garage to clean the snow, we were ankle deep,
Oh,
and up against the cars, we were knee deep in snow. I'm telling, cleared
well, you
all
got
of
way
that
more
up.
than we did.
Oh, please, absolutely. And what makes it so bad, we cleared all of that up. Plus, we cleared off most of my deck. And guess what? It snowed again today. And I'm
Oh
just like, you got
no.
to be kidding me. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's just, but
Meanwhile, Cedric is complaining about 62 degrees and some
okay,
rain.
you know what? I don't want to even hear it. I don't want to even hear it. Seriously. Wow. Oh goodness. But okay, getting down to business here. I find this topic fascinating. Okay. And I guess it's fascinating because I know some people who have heart problems, kidney problems, respiratory problems, etc. And one of the things that um, tickles my mind is the fact that when some of these symptoms begin, it seems like doctors only focus on that one thing and they'll treat that one thing. But then in the meantime, let's just say someone goes in and they have a heart problem. Well, they're given medication to deal with the heart, but in the interim, they'll begin to have respiratory problems, and then it'll trickle down to kidney problems. And I may not have it in that order, but it's like if all of these things are connected, then why isn't the patient being treated for all of those things at one time? That's one thing. And then the other thing with the protein in the urine, now I find this, I don't know, questionable, fascinating, whatever, but our food pyramid has got turned upside down. Yeah, I see you smiling, so you know where I'm going with this. So now, if protein is a problem, and I'm asking this question and I already basically know the answer or at least the why to it, then why is it that the food pyramid has been turned upside down and we're being told to eat more protein, more red meats, more this and more that, as opposed to, and I know the food pyramid has never been perfect, but like you said, a vegan diet to, reverse some of the heart issues and other issues that may be going on within our bodies.
Okay, so first question. My medical school, Southern Illinois University, was established in 1975. So it is one of the youngest, let me say that in perspective, it's one of the youngest medical schools in the country. And this problem-based curriculum was sort of what gave the foundation of creating this new med school. Not many doctors think in a very system-based world. They have to learn that after they graduate because traditionally medical school has been lecture, 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 cadaver study, anatomy, lecture, 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 cadaver study, anatomy. It's very scientist based. It's very science based. Now we're starting to understand that clinicians need to be taught from the get-go how to be a doctor, and then you layer the science on top of being a doctor, and that is a more appropriate way to help people learn and be a better clinician, a better problem solver and thinker in the moment of what's going on. So I'm very thankful for my experience there because I actually feel like I'm a much better kinesthetic learner and an experiential learner. And so to have those moments, they stuck with me versus looking at a bunch of different lectures. To me, that's a challenge.
Mhm.
And to your second point, um, I think it's just it's a part of the challenge with our system that there's several different components that fit into why this is a challenge, right? One, the cattle and meat and chicken industry is a mammoth, and they are a part of the marketing and directing and understanding of these things. And I think there's just a push-pull, right? Because if you're an active person, if you're trying to build muscle, if you're trying to look like you have a stronger and more defined physique, then it does behoove you to add a lot of protein to your diet. And I would hope that because you're in that type of physical shape, that you also would have a healthy cardiovascular system that can handle the volume of protein. Your kidneys work fine. So you shouldn't have an issue with protein. Now, if you are having a particular kidney issue, like somebody like Nick Cannon. A lot of people don't know Nick Cannon was on his deathbed. He had a very serious kidney problem, kidney issue. Luckily, he's has enough resources to have good doctors and good support and was able to get through that process. But Um, Kidneys are not just a senior citizen problem, right? Kidneys can be uh, pissed off really, really easily. It doesn't take a whole lot to get them upset. So you just have to always be intentional about knowing your labs, knowing yourself, knowing your body, all of those kind of things. To me, is what we really need to emphasize and focus on because um, good labs, a good perception of like, wow, I am urinating a lot more these days than I did just a couple of months ago. That might be a sign that something's abnormal with my kidneys or vice versa. I used to urinate 12 times a day. Now I know I can get only 2 or 3 urinations out, and I don't think I've changed anything. Those are reasons to go call and get some labs and find out what's going on and be a little bit more intentional about a fact finding mission because you know something might be out of whack. So I'm not suggesting that doctors shouldn't catch this and shouldn't be more intentional. There's just a lot of reasons and components, in my opinion, why the system is not designed to proactively find these issues. And that's kind of a bit of what really gets my gears oiled. It gets me excited, is because we're now moving into a different mindset, hopefully with technology, with AI, with all of this new equipment, all of these cool ways in which we can be more intentional about understanding what's happening with our body is really, really exciting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, ma'am. Sounds good. All right, guys, we have reached the conclusion of our general session. We're going to roll over into our subscriber session, which is going to take place right now. We're just a few minutes tardy. Don't worry about that. We're going to close out here, and then we'll roll right over to the subscriber session. You know who you are. If you've already are part of the team, please use our link to log in, and we'll get right into the meat and potatoes. We can continue this conversation there, or we can cover whatever else we decide to do. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I have lost track of how many episodes this is now. I need to go back and make sure that I put all the appropriate titling on on many of the videos that are still on YouTube but haven't been officially uploaded. Um, so I'll be sure to do that and get that rolling here in the near future. And also, guys, I just wanted to say thank you so much. This does not happen without you guys. I'll see you again next Tuesday for another episode of Ask Dr. Jeff. Thanks very much.